You ever wonder how some of the wealthiest people on the planet live these incredible, lavish lifestyles, generation after generation, but they never seem to sell off their massive fortunes? I mean, it almost feels like magic. But here's the thing. It's not. It's a strategy.
So how in the world do they pull it off? How do you get your hands on billions in cash for yachts, for mansions, for whatever you want, all while your investment portfolio just keeps growing and the tax man basically leaves you alone? It kind of breaks a fundamental rule we all live by, right? You make money, you have to pay taxes on it. But what if you could spend the money without ever officially making it?
Well, the answer is a strategy known in some very wealthy circles by this brilliantly simple, almost poetic name: buy, borrow, die. It sounds really dramatic, I know, but each of those words is a critical step in one of the most powerful wealth-building strategies ever created. So, let's break it down.
Okay, everything starts with the foundation. The first step, and honestly the most straightforward part of this whole thing, is to buy. This is the engine that makes the whole machine run, because without owning something valuable in the first place, none of the other steps can happen.
So, as you can see, we're right here on step one. The big question is, what are they actually buying? They're buying what are called appreciating assets. That's really just a fancy financial term for stuff that's expected to get more valuable over time. Things like a big portfolio of stocks, government bonds, maybe a ton of prime real estate. The whole key here is long-term growth. This big, ever-growing pile of assets, that's the wealth they're going to tap into, without ever selling a single piece of it.
And that brings us to the second, and you could argue the most clever part of this whole strategy: borrow. This is the move. This is how you unlock all that cash from your growing pile of assets and completely solve the tax problem.
See, for most of us, if we need cash, we sell something, right? But selling is what triggers taxes. The genius move here, our second step, is to borrow against your assets instead.
The tool they use for this is often something called a securities-based line of credit. Now, I know that sounds super complicated, but the idea behind it is actually really simple. Just think of it like a home equity loan, but instead of using your house as collateral, you use your giant stock portfolio. Any bank is going to be thrilled to give you a loan for millions of dollars at a super low interest rate because you've got hundreds of millions in stocks backing it up. So you get cash in your pocket, and your assets, they stay right where they are, still growing in value.
And this right here shows you why this is such a game changer. Look at the left. If you sell $10 million worth of assets, you trigger a capital gains tax on all that growth. We're talking a massive tax bill. But now, look at the right. If you just borrow against those same assets, that loan, it's not income, it's debt. And guess what? Debt is not taxable. The result? You get millions in tax-free cash to go spend, all while your original portfolio is still yours and, you guessed it, still growing. Okay, you're probably thinking, but what about the loan? You have to pay that back eventually, right? Well, that's where we get to the final and maybe the most shocking step in this whole process. Die. This is where the strategy goes from being a personal tax trick to a generational dynasty builder, locking in all those advantages forever. This final move, this is what makes the entire system work across generations. And it's all possible because of one very specific, very powerful feature of the U.S. tax code. It's a little something called the stepped-up basis. So what does that actually mean? Well, when you inherit an asset, say a huge stock portfolio, the tax system basically pretends you bought it for whatever it was worth on the exact day the original owner passed away. All the capital gains, all that growth that happened during that person's entire lifetime is just forgiven. Poof, wiped completely clean from a tax perspective.
And this makes it crystal clear. Let's say someone invested $1 million way back in 1990. By 2026, when they pass away, that portfolio is now worth $10 million. That's a $9 million gain. Normally, selling that would mean a gigantic tax bill, but because of stepped-up basis, their heirs inherit it with a new cost basis of $10 million. So if they turn around and sell it the very next day for that same $10 million, their taxable gain is zero. That's $9 million in appreciation that is never, ever taxed.
So, let's put all three pieces together now. Let's zoom out and see how these steps create this incredibly powerful, self-perpetuating cycle of wealth. So, how does the cycle keep going? Well, the heirs, they inherit the appreciated assets, and yes, they also inherit the loans. But the estate can just use a tiny piece of that now much, much larger portfolio to pay off the original debt, completely tax-free. Or what often happens is, they just roll that old debt into new, bigger loans to get their own tax-free cash. They keep holding the assets, they borrow to fund their lifestyle, and then one day, they die, passing it all on to the next generation with a brand new, freshly reset tax basis. And just like that, the cycle starts all over again.
So if you remember one thing, it's this. Buy, borrow, die is a perfectly legal strategy. It lets the wealthy spend their fortunes without actually selling anything, and then pass that wealth on without its growth ever really getting taxed. It is the ultimate way to preserve a family fortune for generations.
Which, of course, leaves us with one final and pretty provocative question. Is this whole system a planned feature of our tax code, maybe designed to encourage long-term investment? Or is it an unintended bug, a loophole that lets massive fortunes grow tax-free forever? It's definitely something to think about.